Hi everyone, and welcome to another one of my positional previews for the 2024 NFL Draft. If you've not been following along already, we've already looked at the edge group, we've looked at the cornerbacks, we've looked at the offensive tackles, so go back on my videos and find those. But today we're going to be looking at the quarterbacks. Obviously, as a Rams channel, we're always looking at these prospects in terms of who the Rams might be interested in rather than assessing the class as a whole. There's some very good top-end talent in this draft class, and a lot of them won't be available to the Rams unless they're willing to make a very big trade up. The Rams do have, all of a sudden, quite a full quarterback room now. They've obviously acquired Jimmy Garoppolo in free agency. You understand that Stetson Bennett is going to come back to training camp and try and compete for a spot on the roster. So potentially the need for quarterback has reduced over the last few weeks. But we're obviously aware that Matthew Stafford is well into his 30s. He may or may not carry on playing for 3, 4, 5 years, who knows? But it's going to be in the back of the front office's minds that at some point they're going to need a succession plan. And with a draft class like this that has that high-end quarterback talent, this might be the kind of draft where they think about that succession plan. And they might try and get a future starter onto the roster, just so that that plan is already in place and they can start bringing that quarterback along. Obviously, in that context, the Rams aren't necessarily going to be drafting someone in the first round, so I'm going to be looking at quarterbacks who I think may fall to them either on day 2 or day 3, and what those quarterbacks could bring. Another aspect to consider is that Garoppolo is suspended for the first 2 games. So however the roster plays out over the season, they're going to need a second quarterback who can back up Matthew Stafford for those first 2 weeks of the season. Stetson Bennett may have fallen out of favour with them. Certainly a lot of the messaging that we're getting from Sean McVay and Les Snead at the end of the last season was that they didn't necessarily expect Stetson Bennett to be a feature on this roster. So it's a bit of a surprise that he's coming back for training camp. And so with 11 picks in the draft, it really wouldn't surprise me if they add someone in as competition for Stetson Bennett and to try and compete for that initial backup spot, who then becomes a developmental quarterback going into the season once Garoppolo's back. And so I'm looking at all of the quarterback prospects through that lens. And there's some interesting players who certainly other people rate quite highly, who wouldn't be on my board for various reasons. So I thought it'd be useful just to bring up a quick list of who might be available in the 2024 draft. And you can see right at the top, there's Caleb Williams and Drake May, who going into the 2023 college football season were crowned as the best quarterbacks in college football, and neither of them have really done anything to make us doubt that. They're both very, very talented young quarterbacks who can continue to develop, and I imagine will be taken with the first and second picks of the draft. After Caleb Williams and potentially Drake May becomes a bit more eye of the beholder. Some teams will love a player like Jaden Daniels, who can make big throws, has athleticism and good poise. Other teams will really like the experience of JJ McCarthy, the fact that he's just, everywhere he's gone, he's just won football games. And then below those two, there's also Bo Nix and Michael Penix, who are 23 years old, have both been in college football for a long time, very experienced quarterbacks now, and have definitely developed over time. Their earlier tape is very different to their tape from 2023 or even 2022. And so teams will see that kind of player in different lights. If they really like the player they already are, then they're not going to be too worried about the age. Whereas if they're left wanting a bit and still want some more development out of that quarterback, maybe they have some concerns about whether they've already hit their ceiling or not. For me, I think quarterback is such an important position that you're not trying to find these players who are completely versatile, who can do a little bit of everything. You're trying to find a player who excels at one or two things, and you know that you can build an identity around that. I'm not going to be too nitpicky about whether this guy is a dual threat as well as a pocket passer, because in reality, those kind of players only come round once or twice every 5 years, and you do the maths, there's 32 teams in the league. Not every team can have one of those quarterbacks. So if I'm looking for a future successor for Matthew Stafford, I'm trying to look for someone who isn't just going to be good in the regular season, but is someone who can go into a playoff game and put the team on his back and win that game. I'm looking for someone who's got superpowers to win those important games. I'm not looking for someone who's potentially got 60% good at this, 60% good at that, 60% good at everything. I want someone who's 100% good at something and maybe has some flaws, maybe is just okay at other things. But I think just having that superpower is so important. The first quarterback I want to talk about is Washington Huskies quarterback Michael Penix Jr. And Penix is a very interesting quarterback to me. Purely based on tape, he is definitely a top 3 quarterback in this draft in my mind. Personally, I might even have him higher than 3rd. I think he's a very, very talented QB, and we'll get into the tape and see why. But just in general, he is 6'2", 216 pounds. You'll see on the screen that his hands are 10.5 inches, and it really does show on film. He is a very natural thrower of the ball. Every delivery is consistent. Hand size has kind of become a bit of a joke around quarterbacks. It does matter to teams. It determines how consistently a player might throw the ball, how likely they are to fumble it if they're hit, and things like that, all of which can have a massive impact on the games. Usually teams are looking for about 9 inches, and at 10.5 inches, he's got massive hands. It's interesting seeing some of the discourse about Penix. There's been some people saying he doesn't operate well under pressure, which frankly isn't true. He's got an 8% pressure to sack ratio, which means every time he's under pressure, he only gets sacked 8% of the time. And that is historically low. There hasn't been a drafted quarterback coming out of college with a percentage that low in the last 10 years. It obviously doesn't determine success completely, but if you look at the players in the NFL who have the lowest pressure to sack ratio, number 1 is Patrick Mahomes, number 2 is Josh Allen, number 3 is Justin Herbert. It shows that when quarterbacks are operating at the highest level, they are able to avoid negative plays. And I'm sure those quarterbacks do it in different ways. Penix, in particular, is very good at getting the ball out quickly. He's got a really quick release. He is very good at understanding exactly where his receivers are on the field. He knows where the safety valve is to just dump off a pass to his running back or to one of his tight ends, and can do it very quickly and completely switch out of the play he's looking for and find that guy as a safe option, or just knows when to bail out the pocket and run. Just a couple of stats about Penix. He's got a 6.9% big time throw percentage, as a guy that is only behind Jaden Daniels and Drake May in this draft class. And his 1.8% turnover worthy play percentage is really, really low. Pretty much the lowest in class, excluding Bo Nix. And the difference between those two is Penix's average depth of target is over 10 yards, whereas Bo Nix's is 6 yards, considerably lower than any of these other top quarterbacks. So he's able to make the big plays. He doesn't throw risky passes very often, and that's exactly what you want for your quarterback. And for the Rams, looking at someone who might be a successor to Matthew Stafford, you want someone who has that arm who can attack every area of the field. And Penix is exactly that sort of player. And he obviously keeps the ball safe, doesn't take sacks, avoids as many negative plays as possible. And of course, there were some plays where he made the wrong read or just it didn't quite go his way. He's not immune to interceptions. Tom Brady wasn't. Patrick Mahomes isn't. So there obviously are some of those on tape. But when you look across his whole body of work, he is very safe with the ball. Penix and the Washington offense were really, really fun last year. I ended up watching every single one of their games just because I just enjoyed seeing not just Penix, but also the wide receivers operate. So I've seen his full body of work and I've always liked what I've seen. Some people say with Penix that he doesn't have the mobility that some of these other quarterbacks have when things get messy, when he's under pressure to escape the pocket. But a lot of that is that he doesn't need to. He's talked At the Combine, he talked a lot about how he can always see the field, he knows where players are, and understands how to avoid letting pressures become sacks by getting the ball out quickly, knowing when to release the ball, when to stop waiting for the big play and just turn to his safety valve. This play against Arizona is a really good example of that. He's clearly looking for the deep shot, but as soon as that defensive tackle gets loose, he knows just to flip his hips, throw it out to, I think that's Dylan Johnson, and deliver the ball quickly and accurately. And what could have been a sack instantly turns into a decent gain. And that's the sort of play that you see time and time again from Penix. He's got that quick release, and he just has that mental understanding of where to expect his players to be at any time within the play. It's not just about hitting players in rhythm. It's not about getting through his reads at the right pace. It's understanding exactly where his offensive weapons are across the entire field. He's looking for that big play to those big name players like Alunzier and Polk, but he's still spreading the ball out to his tight ends, to his running backs, because he understands where to go with the ball instinctively. That processing speed just is, you've either got it or you don't. It comes naturally to him that he instantly, as soon as he sees that player breaking free of his offensive line, breaking into the pocket, he knows where to deliver the ball, and he does it time and time again. And that's why I think Penix and his skill set translates so well to the NFL in a way that some of these other quarterbacks don't. I think he's just got that mental capacity to step up his game, whatever the situation is around him. It's not about him just having great weapons for Washington, but it's about the fact that he knows how to use them, he knows how to escape problems, and he has that kind of cerebral understanding of the entirety of the offense at any moment in time, that he can just pivot, get the ball out quickly, has that arm strength and the quick release and accuracy to do that effectively. And that is what makes it is the oil within the machine that makes things go smoothly, snap in, snap out, and lets you keep driving down the field. It's not just about those big plays and that big arm. This is another play from that same game against Arizona, and I just love it. Watch how Penix manipulates the coverage here. I don't know whether this is part of the play design or something. He's just sort of ad-libbing. But he goes to throw the ball to number 4 in the flat. 2 players, 2 linebackers, I believe, are just encroaching towards him, ready to make the quick tackle. He fakes the throw, then glances left, and then immediately turns back to 4 and throws the ball to him. And it just completely throws both defenders. 15 is all over the place, just running back and forwards in space. The other player gets fooled by the late route from number 37. I think it's Bernard that he throws to. It just creates 10 yards of separation for him, and it's another first down on the same drive. Absolutely love it, whether it's the design or just him thinking on his feet. It's so well executed. Great manipulation with his eyes. That is high level stuff for someone coming out of college, and that's what you want on your team. That's who you want leading the charge. I wanted to show you this series of plays. Obviously, first down, Penix gets a lot of pressure in his face, just tries to buy time and wait for the shot downfield, but it doesn't come. He knows where his outlet is, throws the ball towards him and out of bounds to avoid the sack. But he doesn't just avoid the sack. He knows where to throw it to avoid the intentional grounding penalty too. Lives to fight another day. Second down, similar story, gets the ball to number 7 and just picks up those important 6 yards to turn a third and long into 3rd and 4, 3rd and manageable. And then unfortunately doesn't get an opportunity to pass, breaks out of the pocket and manages to get the first down, but a flag's thrown on that third down, which becomes 3rd and 14. And he just drops back, throws right down the middle of the field to Bernard for an easy pickup, 15 yards, first down. Those are the plays where we're told that he struggles under pressure, but what can he do in that situation when he's got players charging down on him? He manages the game perfectly, takes what's there. If there's nothing there, he lives to fight another day. And that's exactly what you want from your quarterback. If they're struggling with pressure in their face, that they make sensible decisions and then just get back up and keep playing the game. And obviously those 3 plays didn't go his way, but he was still there, living to fight another day, and makes the big play on 3rd down at 3rd and 14. I've seen people online talking about his Arizona State tape being one of his worst games, so I thought it would be interesting to unpack that and have a look at exactly how Penix performed in that game. And they had a slow start, they were up against it, only behind by 7 points for a long time. But even in this game, you still see Penix's ability to operate under pressure. The 2 tackles have been very, very good for the Huskies in the last year, but in this game they did struggle a little bit and gave up a number of pressures. This clip just demonstrates how Penix operates when he has pressure in his face. We're going to see pressure coming at him, not just from the edges, but also from the defensive tackle in the middle, and he sees it coming and gets the ball out exactly where he wants it to go. But if you look carefully, this whole time, he's not only sensing the pressure, but his eyes are directed upfield towards a post route maybe. He's just keeping the safety locked in the centre of the field, but where he really wants to go is far out left. And he makes a perfect connection. This clip just shows his understanding of the timing of the routes, where he needs to direct his attention, how to manipulate the coverage and get the look that he wants. And even when there's players coming free and rushing towards him, he still just has that composure to sit in the pocket, keeps his eyes directed upfield, keeps the safety locked in place, and at the perfect moment spreads it out to Dunzier on the left-hand side. And that's just it's a beautiful pass. You see a sort of sidearm throwing motion he has. Perfect pass, right on time to his best receiver. This is another one where Penix gets put under pressure, and this time he doesn't stay in the pocket and try and create. He just knows when to bail, finds his running lane, and gets out of bounds safely. And this isn't something that Penix does often, but it shows that he is able and willing to do it when he needs to. He will do everything he can to keep the pass play alive before he bails out the pocket and runs. Not a massively significant play, but it just shows that he can deal with pressure in different ways and doesn't just stick in the pocket as sort of his stats might suggest. Here's another one where he just uses his eyes to keep his safety where he wants him. Slightly to the right, and then straight to that left-hand side again. It's a really nice pass between some defenders, but exactly where only his receiver can get it. Just shows his grasp of the offense and how he creates as a quarterback. Obviously, as the quarterback of the Washington Huskies, he's got 3 very, very talented receivers who are entering the draft this year, and some other good players around him. So there's been some unfair criticism of him that he's just relying on how good Rome Odunze is or Jalen Polk is and just throwing up balls for them to do all the work. And that's not the case. You'll see it on these clips. You can see exactly how he's manipulating the coverage and creating opportunities for these wide receivers. This next play is probably one of those that feed into the narrative that this was his worst game. It's one of the interceptions that he had. Obviously a goal line situation. This is a first down, and obviously on first down in the red zone, you want to play it safe and not turn over the ball. But when you look at this play and see exactly how open his receiver is. You can't blame him for taking the shot. There's a lot of pressure around him, and that's the problem. You can see on the coach's tape, they bring 7, and there's at least 2-3 guys getting loose, getting free up the middle. But he sees how open his receiver is and just tries to make that play. And unfortunately for him, it gets tipped at the line of scrimmage. And a good play by the defensive back to catch that loose ball. But I mean, you can't fault the aggression here. When you see a guy wide open in the end zone, you want your quarterback to take that shot more times than not. Maybe with 7 rushes, you want him to get the ball out a little bit quicker, but can hardly fault him for taking the shot there. This is the next play after that interception. And I found it interesting in some of the postseason interviews with Les Snead and Sean McVay, they were talking about, we want to see those snaps after someone mucks up, something goes wrong, something frustrates them, we want to see how they respond and whether it affects them negatively or positively. Penix comes out here on 1st and 10 at their 46, and just watch this throw. It's a thing of beauty. This man just getting loose beyond his defender, still in double coverage, but he drops the ball in exactly where you want it, away from danger, where his guy can get to it and no one else quite can. And that is a shot and a half. Obviously, didn't complete it, didn't go his way. Polk was right there, running into the end zone. But that's the response you want from your quarterback, just to drop an absolute dime 55 yards downfield. Okay, so that's the Arizona State tape. And you can see he was still operating pretty well under a lot of duress. So moving on to his tape against Texas, you can see him dodging pressure again once more, and this just shows how well he operates in my mind. 4-man rush. He sees Byron Murphy, number 90, flying towards him down the middle. And look at that little sidestep. Finds some space in the pocket for himself. Doesn't bail out completely. Keeps his eye downfield, ready for Odunze. Let's get that ball across midfield. Oh, it's just such a nice pass. Slightly reminiscent of Matthew Stafford, maybe. And those are the sort of plays that Penix makes time and time again. This one's slightly different. We talked about how he wins in different ways against pressure. Another one from the Texas game. And he sees the pressure coming from the edge and from Murphy again in the middle. And this time he doesn't just try and buy a few extra seconds and take a shot downfield. He knows to play it safe, get it to his running back, and get an easy few yards. Pressure comes, straight out. Look how quickly he throws that ball out to the right-hand side. His eyes are completely elsewhere on the field. He's looking downfield, slightly to his left, looking at these, goes through 2 reads. He's waiting for the crossing routes and sees Byron Murphy 2 yards away from him, charging towards him full speed. And he just flips his hips 90 degrees out to the safer option. And that's still a 30-yard throw across the field. Gets to his man in the flat. Unfortunately, he goes down, but it's still positive yardage. He gets 5 yards off that. And it's that sort of operation that I just think, why wouldn't you want that as a GM? Why wouldn't you want that quarterback sitting in the pocket, making those plays, knowing when to push and when to play it safe? What I've tried to do in these clips is not show off his highlight reel. I've tried to show you plays where he is constantly under pressure, because he had a very good offensive line at Washington. He was often able to sit in the pocket and just throw dots left, right and centre across the field to his great receivers, give them a chance to get the ball, throw it over the top of the defence, and they were able to run and make a great play. And I didn't want to just show you that reel. I wanted to show you how he operates when times are hard, when pressure's coming at him, is right in his face, and he can win in different ways. He's got that really quick release, and it shows up in the stats. His pressure to sack ratio is so low, and it's not because he gets happy feet and runs around outside the pocket, Kyler Murray style. It's because he knows how to operate the offense. He was specifically asked about his mobility at the NFL Combine. This is before he did his pro day testing, running a 4.6, 4.5, 4.6. And what he said in his interviews was really interesting to me. He said he doesn't need to be running around the field because he sees the field so well. He knows where his receivers are. He knows that he just needs to buy himself half a second and this guy's going to get free or that guy's going to get free. So I think we need to be careful when we're assessing these quarterback prospects that we're not trying to ask them to do something they don't need to do. He doesn't need to be this Patrick Mahomes imitation where he's running around like Caleb Williams and dodging tackles so that he can throw the ball downfield 6 seconds later. That's not how he operates. That's not his strength. His strength is he can operate within the pocket and he knows when to push and when to play it safe. His big time throw percentage is as high as all these other top prospects. And he's not needing the coverage to fall apart. He's not needing to buy that extra time so that the DBs can no longer keep up with their wide receivers. He is doing that within the framework of the offense. And don't get me wrong, Washington had a very well-designed offense that was creating these opportunities for him, always giving him that safe option in the flats, giving him that short pass, and creating solutions for the player he was. And that's what you want your coaching staff to do. You want to find these players who, however they play, can have an offense molded around them. And last year, he showed he can win game after game after game. He's got those intangibles. He can lead. He can run the offense exactly as you want it. And he has incredible arm talent. So I don't understand why you go for a quarterback who you don't trust to put the game in his hands. You don't trust to make that 40-yard throw when you've got a minute left on the clock. Over Penix, who can do it all, whether he's got pressure in his face or he's got a perfectly clean pocket. He's got that accuracy, he's got that consistency, he's got composure. He's got all the traits that I look for in a quarterback. And it really shocks me that people aren't seeing him as a top 5 prospect, because I think he could very easily be the best quarterback in this draft. And there are some injury concerns. He injured the same ACL twice earlier in his college career. He's injured both shoulders in different ways. And if you've ever dealt with a shoulder injury or a knee injury, that would worry you, that they're as difficult as they come. But he's been healthy for the last 2.5 years. It's clearly not slowed him down in his time at Washington. And as long as those medicals are something that the Rams are happy with, he could be the best quarterback in this draft, and they may be able to take him in the second round, which is insane to me. But if the league is stupid enough to pass on him, and he's sitting there at 52 or even in the 40s, I would not be angry at all if the Rams used their draft capital to get a backup quarterback that they can just have in the building and slot into the offense whenever Matthew Stafford decides his time is up. And you look at someone like Penix, and he is someone who you can put in the current offense. He has got the same arm talent that Matthew Stafford has. And he plays the game in a similar way. He is using his eyes to manipulate these safeties. He's making throws across his body no-look passes or sneaky look passes, whatever you want to call them, he's making the same throws. And you think about how he's had success at Washington. He's had great wide receivers to throw to, like Puka Nacua and Cup are. And then he's also been able to dump the ball off to a good running back who can create in their own right, like Kyron Williams can. I just think when I think about him in this Rams offense, he would be a natural fit to take over from Stafford, whether that's mid-season or beyond in 2025, 2026, whenever it is. And if you can get him outside the first round, it is a no-brainer to me. I think he's a top 5 talent in this draft, and it is insane to me that people aren't talking him up more. People are coming up with criticisms that aren't valid. If they're concerned about the injuries, which we don't know, we never know anything about injuries. We never know what the medicals are saying. And so it's easy to get worked up watching the draft when someone drops 4 rounds later than you're expecting, or that you think they're overdrafted because of injury concerns, because we don't have that information, and there's no point in us trying to speculate. But the teams do have that information. They're happy that this is a guy who could play for the next 10 years or more. It's a no-brainer to take him on day 2. And in all honesty, I wouldn't be mad if they took him at 19. They've got big needs on defense, and I just really hope they don't ignore those needs. But objectively, taking Penix at 19, I think, is a good choice. And if they can somehow find other ways to address the edge position, then why not? It wouldn't be the number 1 priority for me, but certainly in terms of value, he's worth a top 20 pick. So that's Michael Penix Jr. And you can see I would be banging my hand on the table for this guy in the draft room, because I really do think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks I've seen in the last few years. And I love watching Caleb Williams. I think he is more likely than not to be a very, very good quarterback in the NFL. I really like watching Drake May too. I think he's very talented. Both of them are as good as any other prospects that we've seen coming out of college the last 5 years. But Penix just plays the game I want the Rams to play, the way that they've been running the offense through Matthew Stafford. And I love the consistency he shows, and it's his ability to execute the offense that Sean McVay puts together that is most interesting to me. It's all well and good having someone like Caleb who can do it all on his own accord. But if you've got Coach McVay calling the shots, then you want someone who can just deliver whatever he schemes up. And Penix is that kind of player for me, and he doesn't have the fumbles and the turnovers that some of these other prospects have. So for me, he's the best option for the Rams. And as I said, the priority has to be defense early on. But if they somehow find a way to improve the defense outside of the first round, then I think in 5 years' time, you'd look back on a Penix pick very favorably. So I wouldn't be mad. And he's really the only prospect in this draft class that I think might be within the Rams' range and is worth taking with an early pick. And I never like to talk down prospects, so I'm not going to go through the reasons why I don't have a lot of these other quarterbacks on my board. I know there's been a lot of interest in players like Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton, Sam Hartman, but for all of them, I've not come away impressed when I've looked at the tape, when I've looked at their Senior Bowl work, when I've looked at their combine work. I think they've shown flashes, but as a complete package, that's not someone I want to hand over the reins to. And the Rams obviously have a very competent backup now in Jimmy Garoppolo, and have Stetson Bennett in the building, who knows, maybe a future backup. I'm not really interested in spending a day 2 draft pick on someone who you don't foresee as the future of the franchise, and we will just end up keep competing with these other backup quarterbacks for a backup spot. It just seems redundant to me when the Rams have got other needs to address. Someone who I think's flying under the radar a little bit, and that prospect is Kedon Slovis from BYU. He didn't have the greatest 2023 college season, so it's no surprise that a lot of the media attention is on other QBs. But I was really pleasantly surprised when I turned on his tape. And I think of all of the later round prospects, he is the most capable. What really let down the BYU offense last year was the supporting cast around him, and his receivers showed a few flashes. There are a few nice plays, but for the most part, they were dropping very, very good balls. They were dropping very, very good passes. And so the production wasn't necessarily there. The results weren't necessarily there, but he was doing everything within his power to put them in a position to win games and make big plays. And that's what you want to see. Obviously, you're projecting this player into an NFL offense rather than the team that he's already been part of. And so let's jump straight into his tape. You'll see in a lot of these highlights, the play doesn't necessarily go how it's intended to. But I want to show you just his passing ability, his touch. This is a play where he is under instant pressure from the blitz coming from the linebacker. And you'll see this play almost gets intercepted. He gets hit as he throws. Just look at the placement on this ball. When he's got pressure in his face coming from the blitz, and he puts it right into the hands of his tight end. If that tight end has stronger hands, he's running off with that ball. It's just, the touch on that is perfect. Again, with pressure in his face, I was really impressed with that throw. Even if it was almost an interception, but we won't talk about that. This next one's a trick play, and just see, look at the dart he throws to the sideline here. Eighty-three catches at this time. But just look at that delivery, so nice. The context for this next clip is he'd started the game with 1 completion on 7 attempts, and none of them were really his fault. He wasn't doing anything too badly, but obviously that's going to be a knock to the confidence, and this is the next throw he makes after 6 incompletions out of 7 passes. Drops back. Throws it across the middle into triple, quadruple coverage, is that? Just a dart on 1st and 10. And then the very next play, he's getting pressured, his right tackle's almost on his lap, where only his receiver can get it. Hits him in stride. And they get down to the field goal line. He's just a very capable passer, and I've been really impressed with those clips and many more, just to see how he operates that offense. He's never doing anything too scary. And so often their lack of success has been from the receivers rather than him. A lot of pressure coming from the line too. Particularly from that right-hand side. And Slovis is someone who measured 6'2.5", 223 pounds, so good size, nearly 10-inch hands. He ran a 4.55 40-yard dash with a very good 10-yard split. Like Penix, he's good at using his eyes to hold safeties and linebackers in place. He started off at USC and his production has taken a bit of a hit over the last few seasons, so kind of his reputation has suffered over time. So coming to watch him as someone who hasn't been following college football very closely over the last 5 years, I don't necessarily have the same negative connotations about Slovis as maybe a lot of people involved in the industry will do. But I was really impressed with his tape, really surprised myself by how much I liked him. And personally for me, I have him ranked higher than Joe Milton, Jordan Travis, Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt. He's my favourite of these potential day 3 quarterbacks who can come in and compete for a backup job against Stetson Bennett in the off-season, and we'll just see who ends up being that number 2 on weeks 1 and 2 before Garoppolo comes back from his suspension. But if I'm the Rams and I've got 11 picks in the draft, including 7 on day 3, I'm probably going to throw a pick his way. I reckon he's probably going to slide down people's draft boards because of these perceptions people have about him over his college career, but the talent is there, and I think with the right coaching and the right players around him, he could be a really, really good quarterback. And for the Rams, they're probably just looking for a backup, and I think he's someone who could operate the offense at a high level. Slovis was best working across the middle of the field, those intermediate routes. And obviously for the Rams, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are excelling in those parts of the field. So I think he's someone who could come in as a backup to that Rams team if needed and still be competitive and keep feeding those players and being aggressive. He doesn't necessarily have the same deep ball accuracy that you would want from a starter, but with the day 3 pick, you're not looking at him as a long-term starter. You're looking for someone who can come in and operate the offense efficiently, who can attack beyond the first down marker, that 10 to 20 yard range really effectively. And he's that kind of quarterback. So I really like him as a backup option for the Rams, and he would definitely be someone on my draft board on day 3. Thank you for watching this positional video for the 2024 NFL Draft. If you like the content, please do like and subscribe. We will be back every single week with a different position group, all the way up until the NFL Draft. And please, keep in touch for any Rams draft content. You can find me on Twitter at JTPearsonNFL. Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.